from of the webinars we're running to promote the call. There's obviously all the information available on our website and so on. But we thought it's useful to have sessions where we present the opportunities for funding that are available through this instrument, which is supported by Horizon Europe. Today we're have about an hour, so I won't talk too long in the introduction, but go straight into the presentation of the project, the overall project, and also the call, and what you can expect in terms of support from the project call. And then also give a chance to some of the colleagues who are already working on some of the pilot projects under the project, which is the so-called Future Resilience Labs, which we'll explain as we go through the presentation. And as is indicated here on the screen, you can use the chat and Q&A functions for the questions you want to pose, and we'll try and answer them as we proceed this afternoon. So first of all, what's Future Resilience? What's the project, the overall project? What's it about? Resilience is becoming a buzzword in policy circles at different levels, European, national, and regional levels, local levels, cities, as we're faced with different shocks and events that are coming sometimes more or less can be expected, at other times a bit out of the blue and with less capacity to predict. What we're aiming to do is obviously with this project is contribute to strengthening European economic and social resilience by helping different types of organizations, different types of partnerships to prepare for and implement strategies that make their cities, their local areas, their organizations as resilient as possible. We're doing it in the 5 steps you can see here on the screen, or the 5 main building blocks of the project. First of all, we're mapping, that's already underway, relevant policy, research and innovation. R&I on the screen here is research and innovation. I think we've tried to minimize acronyms, but R&I hopefully is familiar to most people. So research and innovation, findings coming from the projects that have been funded or by governments at national or regional or other bodies. We're looking at mapping the policy findings which are relevant for supporting the sort of economic and social resilience that we'd all like to increase and support and foster in our cities and local areas, and to help address a number of different types of societal challenges. As part of that process, we're preparing to then test in a number of real life cases. 3 were selected as part of the original project proposal, and we're going to sell some additional ones through the open call that we're running this afternoon. The 10 resilience labs are what we hope will be the outcomes of the pilot projects that we'll support and fund, where stakeholders get together and test relevant strategies for their context, their situation, that match their needs, and that allow them to then hopefully take that on in their own ongoing day-to-day work or activities, or the different types of strategies they may want to develop for longer-term sustainability. We're here to support, so we have, aside from the mapping, we're developing a knowledge base, but we're also providing support directly from the project team in supporting with tools such as foresight, supporting the modeling of scenarios and so on to help build resilience in each of the regions or local areas that are supported under the project. What's a Future Resilience Lab? Well, we're looking for really creating space for experimentation. A lab isn't necessarily a building, it's not necessarily 4 walls, it's more about people coming together and experimenting together and testing ideas and opportunities in their local area. It's very much about co-creation, so we will be there to support. So each pilot projects, labs will be support experts strong to be the company working to the EU-funded solutions. And of course, there are a myriad of possible situations that each organization or city or region could be facing. We'll try to keep that as possible. It's really about you identifying the potential shocks that you think are coming up. They could be obviously the ones we've heard over the summer from heats, situations, fires, flooding, particularly Roxton's, floods again in Libya, and of course other types of situation that can come from other shocks, which could be economic shocks, other types of environmental shocks, or even social situations which can require building resilience. So poverty and social isolation can be seen as something that needs to be tackled and increase the resilience of cities and increase social cohesion, for instance. So a whole kind of range of possible types of occurrences or contexts that could be the basis for your proposal to the project. I'll go through the presentation. I see there's already at least one hand up, and we'll take questions. I'll stop and take questions in a minute or two. So what do we expect from the project in the sense of your application to the Future Resilience Consortium and the funding that's available? First of all, there's up to €60,000 funding that we can make available for each lab. The budget can be higher, but that's as much as we can fund. So if you have your own resources to bring in, whether they're in kind in terms of staff time, for instance, or from your local budgets or other organizational budgets, that's fine. So if you want to set a budget that's higher for the action, that's fine with us. We can provide up to 60,000, and that's what we'll try and do for each application. In addition to the funding that we can make available, we fund different types of activities, which I'll come to in a minute or two. There's also then access to the beta version of the knowledge base that we're currently building. So we've started work on the knowledge base, which is structured more or less. I say more or less because it might evolve over time as we're building it, but it's more or less structured in this way. So around 4 main pillars: governance, people, prosperity, and planet, or planet, prosperity, people, which is the usual way we do it. With different subheadings, subtopics that are bringing together the results of projects that are applicable in different contexts. So, for instance, tools for digitalization, housing, finance, and so on. It could be applicable to your specific situation, trying to reinforce at your local or organizational level. What else to support? What else can you expect from the project? Well, we're looking to obviously provide each of the selected projects with support from the core consortium. So if you've had a chance to look at our website and the information that's available, you'll have seen that we have a pretty broad consortium with a range of expertise. Once the projects are selected, we'll obviously put hopefully the best experts from our team in support of your project in terms of their thematic knowledge and the types of skills that you require. Secondly, we're joining a community of practice. So the idea is to bring together the projects that we funded and help to exchange experience between the different projects to encourage learning between the testing and design and so on of your resilience activities. A third key point is obviously showcasing your results. So it's great to achieve new results. What we'd like to be able to do is then amplify them, bring them to a wider public, whether it's I'm sitting in Brussels, so whether it's here in Brussels to people at the Parliament or the Commission services or other member states. But we'd like to get the results of your projects out to as broad an audience as possible so that people can, again, build and learn from what's been done. And then we have planned as a kind of last phase, a participation in a lab experience in the real-life simulation lab, which already exists in Mid-Sweden University, so up in the centre north of Sweden, which will be sometime around mid-2025 when all the pilot projects are finished. So we'll bring everyone together and you'll have an opportunity to come together and play with some sort of virtual reality type experiments and other tools that are available in the simulation lab in the Mid-Sweden University, which is one of our partners. What are the way that we will then go about the Future Resilience Lab process? So obviously, once we've selected the projects, we get down to the signature. So you get a contract from us. You get a first payment, which will be 60% of the total amount. We then have a lab kickoff session with the expert team that will be assigned to you from the consortium. That's really to make sure that everything's clear to everyone, that the process that's going to be run is accepted both by, I would say, the local stakeholders or your partners and the stakeholders around you, but also in terms of the overall approach that we're trying to foster and support through Future Resilience. Then there'll be a phase of diagnosis and framing, so looking at who are the stakeholders you should be pulling in, analysing a bit more in depth the challenges in local context. You may want to do desk research. Obviously, what's on this slide is examples, so you may formulate that in a slightly different way, but these are the kind of standard steps we'd expect you to run. We'll then support you in running future workshops, so scenario building with some foresight techniques, and testing those solutions that come out of that in discussions with policymakers and citizens in your area. Exchanging and showcasing, so I already mentioned that as a key element of what we're trying to do is, learning from the learning that or the experimentation we're supporting through this project, and with the validation in the simulation lab, and then closing the lab, but we hope it won't be closed. We hope that based on your experience, that you'll be encouraged to keep a policy lab or a future resilience lab going in your area, in your organization. Obviously, maybe doing different activities in the future, but we hope it's something that you'll be able to learn from within your city, within your organization, within your broader region. So that's really what we're trying to support here, is really building up capacities, knowledge, experience within a group of stakeholders. And again, it can be within either an organization, within a city, within a partnership, in a region, for instance, that's looking to work on a specific topic of resilience and therefore put a bid into the process. I did see a hand up. I don't know if the person who put their hand up has put a question into the chat. I don't see the chat on my screen, but maybe my colleagues who are also in it can help me out if there's any questions in there. Otherwise, stick your hand back up and we'll try and take your question as we go on. I'll go on to the application process, because I guess that's also what you'd like to understand and know how to get your application in. Our aim is to have a process that's relatively simple. We are managing, as always, public funds, so we have to go through a process of application check and due diligence on the projects, but we try to keep the application form as simple as possible. If you have any doubts, we're there to handle questions and respond to queries about what's required. You can see the timeline where we are today. So we launched the call in mid-June. The deadline for submission of applications is 12th of October. Internally, we will do a first eligibility check. So we'll check, is this the sort of application we were expecting? Is it from the right types of organizations? Does it meet the eligibility criteria that we set for the call? Then, assuming you get past that, which I hope everyone will, because I think the eligibility criteria are relatively self-explanatory, but we will do that check. Then there will be a first round of individual expert assessment, an evaluation panel. So again, this sounds very complicated, but it's really 2 people or 3 people sitting together in some cases, assessing your application. And then towards the end of November, we'll have a steering committee on our side, where we will inform our project officer from the European Commission services of the outcome of the call. And then hopefully in time for Christmas, Christmas present for everyone who's been successful, we'll communicate to the awardees. So the funding would start from January 2024. The timescale we're looking at are projects of about 9 to 12 months. Again, we're pretty flexible on that, but it's up to you to make the case for the length of project that you think you require for your exercise. So eligibility, who can apply? Legal entities, that's pretty broad. We've listed a sort of selection here. So it can be a regional or local authority, your city council, it can be your regional agency for, I don't know, water or whatever the topic is you're working on. It can be industries or business groups, civil society associations, so non-governmental organizations or not-for-profit organizations. It can be research infrastructures or research centres. It can also be potentially cross-border. So if you're living in a border region and you're looking at a specific topic and you want to work with colleagues just across the border, that's not a problem as well, just as long as you make the case for that. And obviously you shouldn't have a conflict of interest, which basically means in this case you shouldn't have any sort of formal legal relationship with any of the members of the consortium. So that's pretty self-evident, I think, but just standard procedure. What are the topics that are included? Again, we're being pretty broad here. We have listed in the call documents and in the work we've been developing a list of an indicative list of topics. You'll see it on the next slide. We try to keep that as broad as possible. We don't have any a priori that one topic is better than another. You'll see the 3 cases that were already included in the proposal are working on quite different topics. One's around migration, one's around climate, the effects of the climate crisis in the south of Spain on water and urban living. And the third is on personalized medicine. So 3 very different topics that are already selected. So it just gives you an idea. We're pretty open as long as you can build a resilience topic around it and give us a convincing argument for supporting your project. The sort of guiding questions we've asked ourselves, and you might want to ask yourself when you're preparing your proposal. I mean, obviously, what is the sort of major challenge, shock that your organization, your city is most vulnerable to? We'd like to hear from you in your application about why have you chosen that topic rather than another. The town I live in just outside of Brussels is faced by flooding in the valley, but also biodiversity loss due to housing, urban sprawl, and so on, and heat islands in part of the town as well, despite the fact we're in Belgium, not the south of Spain. So in my hometown, I could imagine 3, 4, 5 topics that could be considered. There's also very different social conditions across different neighbourhoods. So that's just giving you an idea, just from one town in one city, that you could have a whole set of possible topics. And what we're looking for you in your application is really to explain to us why you've chosen the specific challenge or shock, whether it's already there or anticipated shock that you're trying to adapt to and trying to find responses to. How is the challenge perhaps interrelated with other existing problems that your organization, city, region, etc., is already facing? What have you already done? So that's also useful for us to understand. You may already have taken some actions and you're trying to build on those through the funding that you're applying for and build further on that experience. So that's also interesting. If you've done something, you shouldn't think, well, we're faced with a challenge, we haven't done anything, we can't apply. No, you can have, you might already have taken steps. You might just be at a kind of, okay, we've understood what the challenge is and we need to do something stage. So we're very open again to different stages of development in terms of building resilience, because we think that sort of diversity of experience will be very useful. And then again, what are the gaps that need to be addressed? So you may have taken certain actions, but there may be things that you really need to focus on in order to build those sorts of adaptive and transformative capacities that you require in the organization or in the local area. Again, I mentioned an indicative list of topics, which you'll see in the call documents. Again, I won't read them all out. They're in the documents, and you can read them on the screen here. But just again, giving you an idea of the potentially large scope of potential issues that we were willing to see proposals on. There may be others. You might have other ideas, things that you're facing as a daily challenge, or that you have identified as an upcoming challenge for you, and that you want to take on board. So again, this is just their suggestions, and you shouldn't be, don't have to tick boxes here and say, well, we've covered agriculture and health, so we're fine. No, it can be something that you've really is important and a challenge for your organization or area. What are the criteria for selection? I mean, excellence in this sense is not necessarily, I would say, the standard scientific excellence of Horizon Europe or typical research programs. It's about having the capacities and the know-how and the expertise in place to be actually do something with the funding that we're making available and develop a set of solutions and tools. So what we're looking here in the application is for you again to tell us a convincing story that you've already got in place or can bring together a set of people. Excellence is people usually, knowledge and skills, sometimes technologies and equipment as well, obviously, but in this case, we're really thinking about the team of people that will be implementing the project on your side, and how that will then be taken forward at the end of the pilot case and build on that maybe in the future. So it's up to you again to build that story, explain how you've got already in place, but also I think maybe then say what we're looking for are additional skills that we're going to be able to use the funding to either source to bring in additional people from either the area or further afield, or with the interaction with the Future Resilience Consortium team, the experts that we've made available. We think we can actually build on what we have already, that already existing knowledge base, to go a lot further through the pilot project. The team I already mentioned, so it's important for us to understand who's in the project, either in terms of organizations, but also particularly individuals, the people who actually be involved on a day-to-day basis, or at least an ongoing basis throughout the 9 to 12 months. What is their expertise and what are they bringing to the project, and how, if you're working as a small partnership, it's not a lot of money, but you may want to bring together several local partners, then it's also useful for us to understand if you've worked together in the past. Third criteria, feasibility. So we're obviously going to look at, is this something that can be done with the money in the time plan that you've set out in your planning, but also that we have available within the overall project. Is that what you're setting out to do achievable? We'll try and take account of, again, where you're starting from, the baseline you're starting from, the expertise you've got, but also in terms of the time it might take to run through some of the actions you're proposing. And it doesn't mean that we will necessarily, if we get a very good application and everything in the feasibility, we have some worries about where we may, obviously as part of the evaluation process, make recommendations for adjusting some elements of the proposal. The value for money criteria. So obviously we're looking for projects which are cost effective. We're using, again, public money. We're all taxpayers, so we try to use it wisely. The personnel costs can cover a range of things. Again, I mentioned already in the early part of the presentation, you might want to do some desk research in order to build up your own knowledge base or further increase it. That could be done by recruiting an expert for a number of days. You might want to work with stakeholders, so that would be sort of costs around organising workshops and events with them. you might want to engage with other stakeholders in other regions or countries that have already run similar activities, and that might involve different types of mutual learning activities. Could involve, for instance, a small study tour or whatever to another region, or running different types of webinars or online events. And the direct costs that we can cover, can also include some travel costs, as I mentioned, and that should include, you should budget for at least one person attending the validation phase that I mentioned at the simulation lab in mid-Sweden. So within your overall budget, remember to put in a line for attending the event in Sweden. Some frequently asked questions that we've already got coming in, so you may have others once I stop talking. So a couple here that I'll just give you a few examples at this stage. We've had questions like, can a small SME participate? Do you need to have a certain scale? I mean, basically any type of organization, as I mentioned, any scale of enterprise, SME, small, medium enterprise, for those who don't know the jargon. So any scale of enterprise or business or organization can participate. It's really about you convincing us that you've got the team in place or can put the team together in order to do it. Do you need letters of support? It's always nice. If we get too much paperwork, we might not read it all, but if you've got one or two key letters from key stakeholders in your region who consider this to be something very important for them, that's obviously nice to have. We ask for turnover statements for organizations who have those sorts of accounts, just to give us an idea of the financial viability. If you're a new company, well, yeah, it's sometimes difficult, or a new organization, it may be difficult to provide for 2 years. Just provide us with enough information that we can at least have some idea of your own financial capacity. As an example, if you've got a budget of 90,000, you're asking us for 60, we'd like to understand how you're going to be able to fund the 30,000 that you're proposing in addition. The travel costs for the validation phase I already mentioned, so that's another question we've been asked. Can applications include a topic not listed? I've said that already, so just you can take that on board, that we're very open, but it's about you making the argument for the sorts of resilience topics that you think are most important for you. I think as long as you make that argument in a very logical and convincing way, we're very open to the topic, and so on. So I think we've got, I'm looking at the time, so I don't want to talk much longer. So the frequently asked questions will be available on the website as well. We don't need to see technology readiness levels, but if you have some sort of understanding of where you are in terms of developing a concept, for instance, that's also interesting for us to understand in your application to come. So I've taken probably too much time, so it would be good, I think, to take an opportunity for at least one of the labs the labs we've already presented, to give a few words. We've got 3 labs that have been selected as part of the original proposal. Bapimed from Bulgaria, which is looking at personalized medicine. Kios from Greece, which is looking at different aspects around, for instance, migration and isolated communities and so on. And Murcia in the south of Spain, which I mentioned already, which is looking at challenges around urban resilience related to the climate crisis. I'm not sure which of my colleagues are in the call, so whichever one would like to go first, we can give the floor to, or if one of them is there. So maybe you can open your microphone and let me know who's available and wants to take the floor, just to maybe say a few words about your own current lab.
I'm here, editor.
Okay, Martin, great.
So Sif's Bapimed.
Great.
Okay.
Yep. Just ask me. I can push the slides if you want to go through them.
Okay, good, fine. Bapimed is the Bulgarian Association for Personalized Medicine. So what we want to create is a a more resilient healthcare system, and basically we what I'll be running through is the process that we're gonna do, and a process which is somewhat similar to the ones that you will be doing. Next slide, please. So the first part of the process is really for us to explore the problem. So defining the problem and creating a stakeholder analysis, and looking at the drivers, the signals, the blockers. What is the system properties that we need to understand in order for us to engage with this problem. So let me just show you what I mean by that. So if you take the next slide. So in the situation with the problem with healthcare system is really that, as you can see from the graph here, that healthcare expenditures are increasing, and they're increasing in almost every country. So we have increasing healthcare costs, partly due to demographic developments, but also due to the changing lifestyles that we have. So we have a growing burden of non-communicable diseases. And this problem is increasing, and it means that society at large, going 20 years down the line, will have a serious economic issue. So we need to tackle this. So a way to tackle this is to employ technological solutions, making sure that we overcome the inefficiencies that we know that exist in the system, and creating a lot more collaboration between countries and within countries. And that also means focusing a lot more on preventive care. Why? Well, because we know that preventive care is cheap, whereas treatment is expensive. The problem here is that when you look at preventive care, the issue is oftentimes that the data does not follow the individual, which means that we might do preventive care, but we might not see the results until many years after. So there's there are within the system, there's a lack of transparency, and there's a lack of tracking the individual, and that means there's a lack of integration in the system to make this happen. And this is some of the things that we will be looking at. Next slide, please. So after we've explored the problem, what we look into is, and what we create is, different kinds of scenarios that look at what the future might hold. What kind of crisis do we expect? How can we prevent these crises from unfolding to create a more resilient system? Next slide, please. When creating policy solutions or identifying policy solutions, what we do is, as I mentioned, try to understand the problem and look at what are the issues that we're facing today. As I mentioned, we have not enough focus on prevention. That means the entire system is built around treatment. So we don't have the regulatory system in place. We don't have the reimbursement policies in place. So between public bodies and private companies, such as insurance companies, we don't have data that is tracking the individual. And we have a lack of research about how we can integrate preventive care in order to reduce the overall burden on society. On top of that, there are a lot of other issues which is different from different countries, which has to do with infrastructure and so forth. So many of these challenges are known to us, and also some of the policies that engage with the problem is known, such as how can we prevent lung cancer? Well, we can do that by having preventive policies regarding smoking. We can put taxes on smoking. We can have a sugar tax or a fat tax and so forth. So many of these issues actually integrate with society at large and policies that stem from other areas than actual healthcare, which complicates the problem. Next slide, please. So when we've identified the solutions, what we need to do is really test those solutions against the various scenarios that we've developed. And what we do is look at solutions and see if they work in several different scenarios. When they work in several different scenarios, we call these more future-proof. You could say they've been wind tunneled, they've been tested against different kinds of futures, and that means they are more resilient against whatever future that might unfold. So we try to find those policies that works the best, even though we cannot predict what future will come. Next slide, please. And in the end here, what we do is basically just look at, what did we learn? What did the process give us? And hopefully we have found some policies that are that works and that will benefit the EU and everyone who's working within healthcare going forward. Next slide. And key stakeholders here that we've identified are, of course, policymakers, private sector, and research establishment. It goes really across a lot of different actors because there's a lot of different actors outside of healthcare systems that are part of this. So we'll be working across the board with a lot of different actors. Next slide. The way we will engage with in this project with the stakeholders is through, of course, a collaboration with civil societies, and the ones that we engage with, we will inform all stakeholders and the general public. So reach out with the social media and so forth, and try to have as much involvement with as many people that we can in this process. Good. I think this is all for us.
Thanks very much, Martin. Great. So that gives it one example. I'm not sure other colleagues from the other two labs are in the call. If you are, you can raise your hand if you want to say a few words. We've still got some time. I think it's we've still got 20 minutes. So if other colleagues are in the call, they can jump in, or colleagues from the consortium who might want to add anything I've forgotten to say, which is possible. If not, then the examples are also, well, the three existing labs or pilots are available on our website. You can see more information and the slides. In the slides here, we have a full set of slides for the different cases, and I think we'll make those available as well after the webinar. The webinar is also being recorded, so you can check it again after. I noticed there are a number of questions, so I'm not sure, as I'm not the person who set up the call, if people can open or raise their hands and ask to speak. But it's nice to hear people's voices rather than just my own and Martin's. So if people can speak, then Christina, who's our supporting, I don't know whether you can confirm whether people can raise their hand and ask questions orally. But if not, I can go through the questions. So there was a first question from Clement, who from, let's say, Barcelona, who asked if a topic such as active mobility walking would be of interest. So I replied to that one saying, why not, if you can link it to specific challenges, trends, i.e. obesity or other chronic lifestyle diseases. The second question then he asked is the geographical spread of labs. We won't fund 2 projects in Southern Europe or 2 healthcare resilience projects in Eastern Europe. Possibly not, but that, I think our first interest is really in the quality of the proposals. And we will be looking for a diverse range of projects. So yeah, we probably wouldn't fund 2 projects addressing exactly, as an example, a second project exactly addressing the same sort of personalized medicine challenges that Martin just presented. But you may come at a similar topic from a different angle with a different type of partnership, and we may be able to fund that project as complementary. So yeah, it's you can indeed take account of 3 that we're already funding and the types of topics that they're focusing on. There's a question from Marina Kovari, who asks, in the case of a voluntary association, how should the working hours of volunteer members be accounted for? Well, if they're not being paid, then technically you can put it as, I guess, some sort of in kind, but I'm not sure we've had that question. If you have purely voluntary people, then I think it's exactly that. So people are giving their time for the association or the organization. If you, on the other hand, want to recruit people to support on specific issues, that could be experts or a local university or college or business to support on the project, that obviously could be funded. I see the quarter of the third sector. Yeah, if you have national rules for that, then that's fine. I think we're working in 27 plus countries, so associated countries to Horizon Europe are eligible, which I guess means the UK since last week as well. I have to double check that now, having said that. But yeah, I mean, obviously we take account of what your national rules are in terms of accounting and so on. I think it's not shouldn't be an issue if you can explain it to us and make reference to the appropriate rules. Ellen asks, should the validation phase be included in our work plan? Yeah, it should be. So as I mentioned, we do expect you to, at least one person from each of the pilot projects to attend the simulation lab in Mid-Sweden University. That should be at least the cost of that person coming, traveling to Mid-Sweden should be accounted for. You, in your initial budget, you can make a rough estimate of the costs, whether it's by plane, train, whatever to get there, depending on where you're located, and include that in your budget, and similarly for the time for the person to travel and attend the workshop. Exchange and showcasing activities. I think again, if you're looking at activities within your project, where I mentioned that you might want to do a study visit, or you might want to invite people to come and visit your local area and work with you as part of the scenario building, whatever it is. If it makes sense within the project, we're pretty open to that sort of type of funding. So then I see Antun, sorry if I pronounce your name wrong. People pronounce mine wrong all the time as well, so I know how it feels. Ask, can you consider the climate-based adaptation planning project as a topic within the agricultural topic? Certainly, yes. There's, I think, a whole range of actions being taken within the agro sector, whether it's agriculture, forestry, or others, which are looking at building climate adaptation and resilience to the climate crisis. So yes, absolutely. And Isabella Rico asks, can part of the budget be used for employment contracts or to pay consultants? Yes, that's eligible cost as long as you can make make the case for employing, for instance, X number of days of a consultant to support you. Then we have a question from Elena Paleris, my question about the language of the workshop. Is it possible to do in our own language? We could translate later, but probably better to design and collaborate in the local language. Absolutely. I think we understand. Again, I think the study team, the consortium team rather, we cover a fair number of languages. When we assign experts to the different pilot projects, we will try and take that into account. We may not be able to guarantee that we can have, as an example, an Estonian speaker from our team able to speak Estonian, supporting the Estonian project, just as an example, a language that's a bit less spoken. You should take that into account, that if you want this expert team from the consortium to be interacting and working with you, we will try and make align languages with that, but it might not be possible in all cases for all languages. So you might want to have a workaround, whether it's some sort of simultaneous or other type of translation, or at least providing us with the opportunity to interact in English with some of the participants at points. But I think, again, you just need to think around how that's going to work and what you need from the study team. But obviously, I think if you're working with a group of local stakeholders who are not maybe all English proficient, as an example, then we understand that local language might be necessary. Right. Are there other questions, or any of my colleagues from the consortium want to jump in? Martin, I don't know if I covered those questions correctly. Maybe you want to correct me, but if not. Okay.
No, and if you have any questions for me, you can.
Yes, and if you've got questions for Martin and the Bulgarian case, maybe if you want him to expand on anything that he presented, then fire away as well. You can put them in the chat or raise your hand. What I would say is we are we've done this is the second webinar. We're also, obviously, there's an email you can send us questions to. We'll try and the sort of questions that are coming in, the sort of frequently asked ones, we'll try and make sure they're also up on the website, and so people don't have to resubmit the same questions. So don't hesitate to reach out to us in the coming weeks. You have a bit of time still to think about your proposal. We're about a month away, well, exactly a month away from the deadline. The proposal is not supposed to be over long, so it's more about quality rather than quantity. So you still got time to sit down, think through the ideas. If you've got any doubts, whether it's about financial questions or practical questions, or what you should include and not include in the budgeting, or whatever, then do drop us an email. We'll answer within as much as we can without giving any specific proposal an unfair advantage. But yeah, we'll answer questions in a fair and balanced way as they come in. So if there's no other questions at this stage, so I believe we will make available the recording on our website. We'll also make available the slides as additional material. And as I say, you can obviously contact us in the coming days, weeks, to come back to us with any questions you may have, so that we can address them in time. Just put up the last slide. There you go. Hopefully you can all see that. So different ways of contacting us or following the project. So futureresilience.eu is the website. contact@futureresilience.eu if you want to send us an email. Then you can follow us on Twitter, or sorry, is it X now? We haven't changed the symbol yet. I prefer the bird myself. And LinkedIn. So you can join the group on LinkedIn, I think, or at least follow the page on LinkedIn. And we try and post news and updates there as regularly as possible. And obviously, those are also channels we will use along with other ones during the pilot project implementation, and also to promote the results of the implementation. In addition to the lab, we'll have, I think, a final conference, the simulation lab, sorry, in 2025. We'll have a final event or conference, and hopefully that will also give everyone a chance to come together and continue the learning and talk about how the labs that you've been able to develop and experiment with, and the ideas that you've been able to develop for supporting resilience can then be further developed in coming years as your organisation and local area adapts and prevents and so on, different types of shocks. So given that, I think if there's no other additional questions, then I'll thank you very much for your attention. Thanks very much, Martin, for presenting the Bulgarian case. And as I say, feel free to contact us in the different ways I've indicated on that last slide in the coming weeks. And we look very much forward to getting your proposals, reading them with interest, and I'm sure they'll be inspiring and give us lots of food for thought. And hopefully a number of the people in the call today will have the opportunity to work with us from January next year. So thank you very much and have a good evening. And thanks for joining again. Bye-bye.